Ask a trans person the gender of their pet, and then ask them how they can tell.
It is a cat.
Right here, yeah. The cat is a boy. How do I know?
Cats don't really have gender. They had just said that there's a way to check its gender.
Oh, that's how.
Ask a trans person the gender of their pet, and then ask them how they can tell.
Because of her parts. She had ovaries.
I think that women aren't garbage men because they don't want to do that job, and it's physically laborious.
I think
and
most
women
people
don't want to do.
Most people don't want to.
You know, the most people don't want to do physically laborious jobs. I think you're gonna have to back that up because as it turns out, men, when they're polled on this, actually do enjoy physically laborious jobs, and that's why they gravitate towards them. The idea that kind of the socialists like you on the left say, nobody wants to do a physically intensive job. Actually, there's quite a few people who only want to do physically intensive jobs. They get bored at a desk. They don't like working inside. Any number of different reasons.
The point is, our society doesn't really value physical labor maybe as much as it should.
Yeah, I think it does. I think maybe women don't.
I don't think.
Maybe women don't value it because they don't do any of those jobs, so they don't know how valuable they are.
He's spot on. Men do value physically laborious jobs because they understand how important it is for society. The only time I've seen people take these jobs for granted and devalue them was from people like her.
If you work for a company, are you going to speak to your boss the same way your boss speaks to you?
You are not my boss.
Let me stop. Okay, got it.
No.
You're not.
No, I will not.
Right? And the fact that you just said you are not my boss is because you view your boss as more than your man, and that's your problem. It's the problem the way you view the man.
My boss pays me.
And your man currently right now takes care of you and your 4 kids.
I have a problem with doubling down. I don't know. I don't like certain, don't speak to me that way. I'm just so about something like that.
It's sad that they think it's okay to treat their boss with more respect than they treat their own man.
So they all went on a hike. I'm swaddled up in my hammock, and then I heard the men returning without the ladies, and I thought, that's suspicious. That is weird. And it turns out they just got tuckered out early on the hike, and they decided to come back early. So the men made a campfire. They start making their little dinners. I was pretending to be asleep because I didn't want to talk to them, and also I was curious to hear what they were going to talk about with all the women out of the camp. And these men talked about pooping for 45 minutes. They started a conversation about pooping outside because we were camping, and they were all sharing their different techniques. Some liked to squat. Some liked to find a friendly log. Some of them liked to dig a little hole. And from there, it moved on to the biggest poops they'd ever taken in their life, the most painful poops they'd ever taken. Then they started talking about the kind of poops they got when they drank too much. Then they started talking about the smelliest poops they'd ever taken in the most public places. And every single man had their own individual story for each one of these scenarios. They were going around the campfire sharing each of their stories.
I'm pretty sure that every single man has had this conversation with his group of guy friends. But of course, guys are not going to have this conversation in front of women. So for women that come in after that conversation and they ask the men, what have you guys been doing? What have you been talking about? The men will always say, nothing. But here's the truth, ladies. The guys are not talking about other women. They are just talking about stuff like this.
Y'all, tell me why this dude told me to meet him at Osaka's at 6. And so 6:10, I'm on my way, but he never texts back. And I get here, he's nowhere to be found. It's 6:50.
That's because you were supposed to be there at 6, but you got there 50 minutes late. And men with self-respect don't tolerate that behavior, so he left. Now, you're trying to make him look like the bad guy, despite you being 50 minutes late, acting as if he was just supposed to sit there for almost an hour, waiting for you to show up.
I'm confused how 2 beautiful women.
And what exactly could have these 2 beautiful women confused?
Can't even get talked to.
Let's consider the possibilities. The first being that a lot of guys probably already assume that one is probably in a relationship, so it's not worth their time to bother. The second is that a lot of attractive women have put out there that unless a guy is up to their standards, they're not even going to consider him. So if a guy isn't certain that he's going to meet those high standards, then he's not going to try. Also, a lot of guys are tired of having their hearts broken, of being rejected, and they're just not wanting to have a relationship, so that's another reason. But I think the biggest reason is what a lot of women have put out there themselves on social media, is that they want men to leave them alone. They'd rather choose the bear, and that they don't need men at all. And the men have been hearing this. They've been listening. And so, unfortunately for those women that do want to be approached by men, a lot of other women have actually put a stop to that. So if one is wondering why men don't approach women anymore, I think one knows where to lay the blame.
Where are the men with the money that you speak of?
You got rid of them, remember? You said it wasn't fair that men made more money, and so you insisted on an equal pay, and you asked for jobs and school and money to be distributed towards you. And so the men who had money now make not as much as you. You know, just like you wanted. That's what you wanted, right? You might notice I use the same drawings every time because it's the same thing every time. That men used to make more, and then you wanted equality, but men still have to pay, so now they have less money than you. And it's not because you're doing better, it's because you ask to be given for free. Here, let me show you.
We don't need empowering quotes. We need promotions.
There, you see that? It says the future is female promotions. Now, maybe you could check my math on this, but if the future is female promotions, then that would mean not male promotions. And promotions are where you get money, so then the future would be female money. Not like this, more like this, or even farther. So then the men with money would become the men without money, because you have it.
At not one point in my life.
Oh, the mindset of today's modern women.
The way I used to reject men versus how I reject them now is so funny. Like, I used to be like, oh, sorry, I have a boyfriend, totally single. I'm lesbian before I knew I was bisexual. Like, I used to lie and try to, like, preserve their ego. Now, I'm just like, I'm not attracted to you at all and your breath smells.
Enjoy your smugness, darling, cuz I hate to break it to you, but to quote Bob Dylan, the times, they are a-changin'. Cuz you see, while right now you, like most of today's modern women, think you're all that, the reality is, you're really not. And in a couple more years, when you hit the wall, when you realize that you aren't the 10 you think you are, and that the very men you are now rejecting, the ones you're mocking in your video, well, they're now rejecting you. That's when you'll be making videos crying about how mean and unfair those men are. You'll be sitting home alone, night after night, wallowing in your bitterness and blaming those men for not wanting to deal with your narcissism and self-absorption. You'll be asking, where did all the good men go, and why aren't they asking me out? How do I know? Because we're seeing that reality play out every single day in today's society and on social media. The reality that so many women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who acted just like you did in your video in their 20s now have to face because no real man wants to deal with their toxicity and self-absorption. It's why they all become 3Bs. Broke, bitter, and...
If you enjoyed this video, I promise you'll enjoy this next video. I will see you there.